Hi, this is Matt with AppliancePartsPros.com. Today we'll be showing you how to repair your appliance. Remember, anytime you work on an appliance, make sure it's unplugged or the circuit breakers are off so there's no chance of electrocution. Also make sure you turn off your hot and cold water supplies. In this video we're going to show you how to change out the Whirlpool washer bearing and tub seal kit using the bearing installation tool. It's going to be a very easy repair and should only take a few minutes to show you how to do it. If you already have both of these, great. If not, you can click on the link below or get it at AppliancePartsPros.com. When you open up the packages, the bearing and tub seal kit is going to include the instructions, the bottom bearing washer, the shaft nut, the bottom bearing, the top bearing, the tub seal, the grease, the adhesive, the spacer tube, and the drive shaft. The bearing installation tool is going to include the seal press tool, the bearing removal rod, and the bearing installation tool. The bearings in the tub seal are located in the outer tub. The main reason you'll be changing them out is if the seal has gone bad, causing the bearings to fail, creating a lot of noise while the machine operates. The bearing installation tool is used to install the new bearings and seal into the outer tub. In order to change the part, we're going to tilt the washer back. First thing we're going to do is tape the lid down. It'll spring up if you don't, so you want to make sure you get it secure. Now that we have the top tape down, we can change the bearings. In order to do this repair, we have to tilt the washer back and set it on its feet multiple times throughout the repair. So you want to make sure you're ready to do that. You can pull the washer out and put a towel across the back of the console in order to rest the washer against the wall so you don't damage the console or the wall. And when we lift the top assembly up, you can put the towel across here so this rests against the wall and doesn't damage it. We're going to support ours from the back, and we're going to support the top assembly with a lanyard. So once you're all ready to go, we can start the repair. We have to release the locks that hold the top to the cabinet. They're located about 6 inches in from each corner. We're going to slide the putty knife in, and you'll feel it spring against the lock. Once you have the lock pushed in, you can twist the putty knife to release it, and you have to lift up on the top and separate it. You got to be careful so it doesn't snap back down. Once you have one side up, we can come do the other side. Once you have them both released, you can carefully lift the top up. Once you have the top up all the way, we're going to support it with a lanyard. These hinges aren't very strong, and you don't want to use those to try to support the whole top assembly. So we're going to use a lanyard and just hook it into the top and then onto the cabinet. Now that we have the top assembly lifted up, we can take the recirculation hose off the tub cover. It's here in the left rear corner. It's held down by a clamp. Usually it's a squeeze type clamp. You can take a pliers and just compress it and move it down. Somebody's replaced ours with a screw type, so we're going to use our 5/16 nut driver to loosen it up so we can take the hose off and get it out of the way. Once you have the clamp loosened up or moved down, you can pull the hose off the tub cover. Once you have the hose off, you can just set it out of the way so we can take the machine apart. We can take the agitator out of the inner tub. There's a little hole right here on the cap. We're going to take a small flathead screwdriver and kind of pry in here to lift it off. Once you have it off, you can set it aside, and then we can reach in and pull the dust cover off and make sure the O-ring is on it. Now that we have the dust cover out of the way, we have access to the bolt at the bottom of the agitator. We're going to reach in with a 7/16 socket with a long extension and take it out. As you start to loosen it, the tub may start to turn, so you may have to hold the agitator to break the bolt free. Once you have the bolt loose, we're going to lift the upper agitator out and set it aside. You want to be careful as you take it out. You don't want it to fall apart, otherwise the agitator dogs in there are going to have to be put back together. So just keep it all as one piece and set it aside. With the upper agitator out of the way, we can take this little ring bearing out and set it aside. Once you have the bearing set aside, we can reach in and pull the lower agitator out. You might have to get your fingers underneath it and wiggle it back and forth. You want to be careful that you don't hit yourself as you're pulling it out. Once you have it off the shaft, you can pull it out of the washer. Now that we have the agitator out, we can remove the tub cover. There's a bunch of locking tabs around the outer edge of the tub cover. We're just going to go around and release them, then lift up on the tub cover so we can take it off. Once you have all the tabs released, you can lift the tub cover off and set it aside. Now we can take out the basket hub. We're going to use a Phillips screwdriver to reach in and take all the screws out. Now that we have all the screws out, we can reach in and pull the basket hub out. Once you have the first piece out, you can reach in and pull the second one off. Once you have both pieces out, you can set them aside. Now that we have the drive hub out, we can take the inner tub out. Now, there are lots of people saying that they have problems lifting their inner tub out because it gets so gunked up around the shaft. So you can put a bunch of penetrating oil in between the shaft and the tub and let it soak in and try to lift it out. You should try to lift the tub with one person on each side. You can also use a jack and a 2x4 in order to help lift the tub out. Our tub actually came out fairly easy, but we're going to show you how to do the 2x4 method with the jack, just in case yours is stuck in there. We're going to use a piece of wood that we have in the room. You want to use a 2x4, which is more sturdy and can take the pressure. Once you let the penetrating oil soak in, you want to get a 2x4. This is our stand-in 2x4 that we're going to use. And you want it to be about 22 inches. You can measure from each side of your tub. And you want the wood to fit in there. And you're going to have to turn it to get it to go down in and then lift up. And as you lift up, there's a lip on the inside of the tub where the metal part of the tub turns in. And that's where you want the wood to catch on each side. If you try to catch it on this plastic rim that's on the top of the metal, you're just going to break this off the tub as you try to lift it out. So ours was about 22 inches long, but you can measure yours just to make sure you get the right length. Once you have the wood cut to length, we can grab the jack and put it in there. It's going to be a little bit of a balancing act, but you want to set the jack just on top of the drive shaft and then put your piece of wood in here and set it on top of the jack. And then once you have the jack run up to where it's holding the wood, you're going to slowly start to lift the tub. If you can't turn your jack by hand, you can grab a screwdriver and use that to turn the jack. But you just want to slowly and carefully, so you don't stress anything or break anything, slowly lift the inner tub off the drive shaft. Once you hear the tub pop or come off the shaft enough that you can lift it out, you can loosen up the jack so we can pull the wood and the jack out. Once you have the jack and the wood out of the tub, we can lift it out of the washer. Once you have the tub free, we can reach in and lift it out. You want to have somebody help you so it's lifted equally on both sides and comes out pretty easy. Once you have it out, you can set it aside. Now that we have the inner tub out, we can carefully lower the top down. You can keep your lanyard in here if you want, or if you have a towel, you can set it aside while you put the top down. You don't have to put the top down all the way. If it happens to snap close and lock, we can always open it later. Once you have it all the way down, we can tilt the machine back so we can get underneath. Now that we have access underneath the machine, we can take out the rotor. It's held in by a 1/4-inch drive bolt. And we're going to turn the rotor so we line up this hole that's in the stator. Then we're going to put a screwdriver through it to hold it in place. If you have a socket with a 1/4-inch hex head on it, you can use that instead of an Allen wrench. This wasn't on there that tight. We were able to get it off just like this. Once you have it broke free, you can pull the screwdriver out and just unscrew it. Once you feel that the bolt has come out all the way and it's not coming off the threads anymore, then we can grab the motor rotor and pull it off. Once you have it off, you can pull it out of the washer. Once you have the motor rotor off, you want to check for damage. Our motor stator was cracked in 4 places. If yours is damaged too, you want to make sure you check out the repair video on how to change it. We can remove the 4 bolts that hold the motor stator onto the bottom of the washer. We're going to use a ratchet with a 3/8" socket. Once you have the last bolt almost out, you want to hold the stator and take the bolt and the retainer ring off. Once you have the ring off and set aside, we're going to wiggle it and get it free. Once you have it off, we're going to carefully lower it down. You want to take the motor shield off and set it aside. Then we're going to take these 3 wire harness mounting clips out, just so we have a little bit more wire to move the stator around. And then on the back side, we're going to disconnect this 3-wire connector. All you have to do is pull it off. And then the rotor position sensor is right here. It has a little locking clip on each side. If you have to, you can lift up with a small flathead screwdriver to break it free. Once you have it off, you can pull it away from the stator. You can set it aside on something so it doesn't get damaged. With everything out of the way, we can take the nut off that holds the shaft. We're going to use a big crescent wrench. If you happen to have a big wrench, it's about 1 1/4 inches. And then we're going to grab a pair of large pliers and grab onto the shaft and hold it while we loosen the nut up. Once you have the nut broken free, you can just unscrew it with your hand and take it out. Once you have the nut off and out of the way, we can grab a hammer and we're going to pound this shaft up into the outer tub. Once you have it driven through, we can put the washer back on its feet and lift the top up so it's supported. If your lanyard came out, you can grab it and support the top. We can reach in and grab the drive shaft with the seal attached to it. Once you have it, you can pull the drive shaft and the seal out of the washer. Now we can use the bearing removal rod to punch out the lower bearing. If you look down the spacer tube at the very bottom around the lip, you'll see the edge of the lower bearing, and you want to go in at an angle and then kind of go at a couple different angles as you work the bearing out. Once you have the lower bearing driven out, the spacer rod and the washers are all going to fall out. So we're going to pick up the washer again and go underneath and clean it all up. Now we can pick up the old parts underneath the machine. Now that we have the bearing driven out, you want to check this area, the seat where the bearing sits, and just clean it up if there's any particles or rust or anything in there. There shouldn't be. If there's a little bit of grease left in there, you don't have to worry about that. Once you have the bearing seat cleaned up, we're going to drive the upper bearing out. We're going to do it the same way we drove out the lower one. Once you have the bearing driven out, we can put the washer back on its feet. Now that we have the lid up, we have access to the tub. We can reach in and grab the upper bearing. Once you have it, you can grab it and pull it out of the tub. Here's the old bearing and tub seal kit. next to the new one. If you already have one of these, great. If not, you can get it at appliancepartspros.com. We can clean up the bearing seat and where the seal sits. We're just going to come down with a rag and clean the area up and get all this residue out of here. Once you have it cleaned up, we have to clean the weep hole. It's located right over here, about 4 or 5 o'clock, assuming that the front of the washer is 6 o'clock. All you have to do is take a small screwdriver and push it through, and that'll clean it out. Once you have the weep hole cleaned out, we can put the new bearings into the washer. Now we can put the upper bearing into the tub. We're just going to carefully lower it down into a position, and you want to set it into its seat as evenly as you possibly can. You don't want to start it off crooked. Then we're going to take the bearing installation tool and we're going to take these lower 3 pieces off. We're going to put those on when we get underneath. Once you have those off, you want to set this through the upper bearing, and you want to make sure the arm is over in the sump area. Once you have that in place, we can tilt the washer back and put the lower parts in. Now we can put the lower parts in. We're going to put the spacer tube on first. We're just going to slide it up. And then we can put the bearing washer on. And then we can put the lower bearing on. Once you have the bearing on and kind of up in its seat ready to go on, we can put the lower half of the tools on. We're going to put the bearing press on, and then the bearing, and then the nut to tighten it down. We're just going to use a adjustable wrench to tighten it down. If you have a big wrench, you can use it. Otherwise, just use one of these. And we're just going to turn it clockwise like you would tighten a normal nut. And it's going to pull the bearings in and seat them nice and evenly. Once you feel it tighten up, we can loosen this up and take it off. Should come off pretty easy. Once you have it loose, you can just unscrew it with your hand. We can take the lower part of the tool out. You see that the bearing is pressed in nice and evenly, and you'll have about 1/8 to maybe 3/16 of an inch of the new bearing sticking out from the aluminum fitting where it sits. Once you have the lower part of the tools off, we can put the washer back on its feet and pull the tool out from the top. Now we can reach in and take the bearing tool out. Now that we have the bearing tool out, we can put the drive shaft in. We have to make sure that when we put it in, that it goes all the way down so that the upper bearing is resting against this lip right here. So if it doesn't drop all the way down, we're going to grab a block of wood and a hammer and tap it down. Once you have the drive shaft tapped all the way down, the drive shaft should spin freely, and then we can go underneath and put the shaft nut on from the bottom. Now that we're underneath the washer, we can look at the drive shaft. If you don't have enough threads coming out the bottom to put the nut on and have 1 or 2 threads still coming out from the bottom of the nut, you may have to go back up and tap this down a few more times. Once you're sure you have it down far enough, we can put the nut on the drive shaft. There's some thread locker on it, so maybe a little bit harder to put on there and get started. Once you get it started, we're going to use our big crescent wrench to tighten it down, and we're going to use our big pliers to hold on to the very end of the drive shaft. You only want to grab this last ½ an inch or 3/8 of an inch or so, because you don't want to damage the splines with the pliers. Once you're ready, you can tighten it down. You want to make sure you don't over tighten the nut, or it may bind up the drive shaft and an error code may come up. Once you have the shaft nut tightened down, we can put everything else on the bottom of the washer. First, we're going to hook the wires back up to the stator. So we're going to carefully bring it in, and you want to make sure this back metal plate is on. And then we're going to connect the wire harness. The 3 wires went right here. It was red, blue, and yellow, just like on the plug. All you have to do is slide it on so you get a good connection. And then we can put the rotor position sensor on. There's an arrow right here on the stator and on the sensor that you need to line up. And then you can push it back and snap it into place. You want to make sure that the locking tabs on each side snap on. Once you have the sensor in place, we can carefully lift the stator up into place, and we can hold it while we grab the motor shield and put it in behind it. You want to make sure that the cutout for the sensor is over here at 3 o'clock. Once you have it in place, we can hold it there while we carefully lift the stator up and line it up with the bolt holes. Once you have it in place, we can grab the front plate and put it in and line it up and then hold it. And we can put in the upper bolt and use our 3/8 inch socket with the ratchet to tighten it down. Once you have the first one in, you go around and put the other 3 in. Now that we have all the bolts tightened down, we can put the rotor back on. When we took the rotor off, we noticed that there was thread locker on the bolt that holds it on. It's really hard to put the thread locker down onto the bolt because it's in the rotor like that. So we're going to take some blue thread locker and put it up into the threads into the drive shaft. You want to make sure you use blue so it's not completely locked on there and you'll never get it off again. Once you have the thread locker up into the threads, we can put the rotor back in place. You want to be careful when you're putting the rotor back on. You want to make sure that the splines on the drive shaft line up with the ones in the rotor. If you force it on there, you might damage the splines on the rotor. If you have to, you might have to turn it back and forth a little bit to get it to line up with the splines. Once you have it on, we can use our 1/4 inch Allen wrench to tighten it down. Once you have it tight, we can spin the rotor until the holes line up, and we can put the small Phillips screwdriver in there again, and then torque the bolt down a little bit to tighten it up. Now that we have everything installed under the washer, we can tilt it back on its feet. Now we're going to put the tub seal on. When we push it down with the seal installation tool, you want to make sure that you really center this on the seal. You don't want to be a little bit off to one side or the other. You just want to push straight down. Then we have to check the seal and make sure that the spring is still there. And then we have to put the sealant and the grease on it. On the grease, they talk about 2 different pockets. If you'll notice in the seal, there's this smaller one towards the top and then the larger one towards the bottom. So you want to make sure both of those have grease in them. We're going to put that on first. So we'll just run this in here and fill it up. Once you have it filled up, we can put the adhesive on. This stuff's pretty sticky, so we're just going to run a bead towards the bottom of the seal, and then as you press it into the tub, it's going to work the sealant all the way up to the top. You want to make sure you have some rags around or some paper towels. Like I said, this stuff is pretty sticky. And as you put this stuff on, you want to give it a minute to get a little tacky before you push it down into the tub. Once you have the sealant and the grease on, we can put it into the tub. Now we can lower the seal down the shaft. Once you have the seal all the way down the shaft, we can use the tool to tap it down till it bottoms out. Ready? Once you have the seal bottomed out, we can put some more of the sealant around the top of the seal. You want to put a nice even coat around the top of the tub seal and then spread it around so you get a nice even coating. Now we can reach in and clean all the excess grease off the shaft so it doesn't get on your clothes when you start to wash. Once you have the shaft cleaned up, we can put the washer back together. You want to make sure before you run any water through it or run the diagnosis test that you let the sealant cure overnight so it hardens up and you don't have any problems. Since it's not too often that you have the inner tub out of your washer, you may want to take the opportunity to clean the filter. It's located in the back of the washer. It's held in by 2 1/4-inch screws. All you have to do is take the screws out and clean the filter out and whatever you find underneath it. Once you have it cleaned up, you can put it back in, and then we can put the inner tub back in. The inner tub's kind of heavy, so if you need to, you can grab somebody to help you. We're just going to set it up on the lip of the washer and then carefully set it down over the shaft and settle it down into the washer. Now that we have the inner basket in, we can put the basket hub in. You want to be very careful when you're putting this in that you don't drop any of the screws through the openings in the inner tub, otherwise you're going to have to lift it back out to get the screw. To put the driver hub in, all you have to do is set it down on the shaft. You want to make sure that the silver washer didn't fall off on the backside. All you have to do is line up the teeth and slide it down. Once you have it all the way down, we can put the driven hub on. Same thing with that. You want to lower down and line up the teeth with the driver hub. And if it doesn't line up with your screw holes, you may have to lift it up and turn it a couple teeth until it does. Once you have the holes lined up, we can use our Phillips screwdriver to put the screws back in. Now that we have the basket hub in, we can put the tub cover on. To put the tub cover on, all you have to do is line it up with the outer lip of the new tub. And you want to make sure that the recirculation hose fitting is up here in the back so it lines up when we put that hose in. Once you have it lined up, we can just go around and lock all the locking tabs in. Now that we have the tub cover snapped into place, we can hook up the recirculation hose. All you have to do is line it up and push it onto the fitting. Once you have it all the way on, you can grab your pliers and move the clamp up. If you have a screw clamp like we have, you're going to have to come from behind with a 5/16 nut driver and tighten it down. Once you have it tightened down, we can put the agitator back in the washer. We took the lower and the upper agitator out separately. We're going to put them back together and set it down all as one piece. You may have to move the agitator back and forth a little bit to get the splines to line up so the agitator goes down all the way. Once you have the agitator in place, we can use our 7/16" socket and a long extension with the ratchet to tighten it down. Once you get it tight, the tub's going to start to turn. You're going to have to reach in and hold the agitator on the lower part so you can tighten it down. Once you have it tightened down, you can pull the socket out and we can put the cover and the cap on. Before you put the cover on, you may want to get the O-ring wet. It helps it slide down into the agitator easier. Once you have the cover in, we can put the agitator cap back on. All you have to do is line it back up with the top of the agitator and snap it into place. Now that you have the agitator put back in, we can put the top of the machine back down. Before we put the washer top down for the final time, you want to look for this little envelope in here. It has the diagnostic instructions in it. Once everything's cured and you're ready to run the diagnostic test, that paperwork will tell you how to run the CO test and the manual spin test. Now that we have the machine put back together and the diagnostic paperwork out of it, we can put the top down. We're going to take the lanyard off. We're going to unhook the top first and then unhook the bottom. Then we can carefully lower the top down. As you lower it down, you want to make sure that these holes right here line up on the bolts as you lower it down. Once you have the top down and the holes lined up with the bolts, you can push it down to lock it in place. Once you have the top down and secure, we can take the tape off the lid. Once you have the tape off, you can plug the washer back in, turn the water back on, and take it for a spin. Thanks for joining us for another successful repair brought to you by AppliancePartsPros.com. Check out our other repair videos on our site, Facebook, and YouTube.